Intro for the third time. It's a clear and sunny day, last day of winter here in Australia since we're following the meteorological season. Tomorrow is the start of spring, and I wanted to do some repotting because I mostly have echeverias and they start growing during the warmer months. So spring, it would start getting warmer, and there's a few reasons why I'm motivated to do some repotting today. Yes, it's working. Okay. The first reason is that I am unable to work on my agavoides area, mainly because there's still a lot of rain. It was raining earlier this week, and according to the forecast, it's going to rain again tomorrow and maybe a few days after that. I'm not sure if it's going to be hard rain or just a slight drizzle, but still, I would not like to expose any of the cuts that I would make to the rain. Yay, it's working. The second reason is that, as you know, the spring show for the cactus and succulent show is coming in October. That's a few more months from now. And I would like to be able to move some of these plants into their proper pots because, like I said, they'll be going to the show and they need to be more presentable. So Bella says it's raining in Newcastle, so no outside garden fun here. Yeah, you could pretend you're right here today, I guess. And how many are viewing right now? I can't tell because the phone interface is different. It says there are 6. Wow, there's lots of people now. Okay, so I think we should get started. In Melbourne, it's always going to rain. Yeah, that's exactly right, honeybee. It's always going to rain. Finally spring. Yes. I'm not sure what the temperature today is. Let me just quickly pick at my... It's supposed to be... It's 17.6 degrees Celsius. Feels like 11.5 because it's quite windy, and because it's clear. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but yeah, you could go Google yourself because I don't have a browser with me. Anyway, I'd like to show you several things that I have behind me. There's a few things actually. So I've got a wheelbarrow, I've got a little mound of scoria, some bags of garden soil, and a whole lot of plants. Normally I would just order some soil from Soilworks, but I'm not going to fill up an entire garden bed. So, with Soilworks, things are in bulk, and I just need a few bags just to fill up a few pots. Although I did pull out a lot of plants here just in case, just to be sure, in case I end up with more soil than I need. And hi, Jennifer. 17 yeah. Whereabouts are you, honeybee? Are you in somewhere in the west? Because I'm in the west and it's a lot clearer here. There's usually a different climate in the east. Let me just walk you through some of the things that we see here. I'm going to bring the camera closer. So as you can see, it's quite busy in here. This little mound here is scoria. I've got some bags of soil, regular garden soil, and of course pots. Now I've shown you this I go with either 1:1, or depending on the plant, depending on the type of pot, and depending on the climate, I guess, and where I place them, I might end up even adding more scoria. So yeah, it depends on how much drainage I want them to have. With terracotta pots, clay pots, and anything that's porous, anything that's unsealed, I usually just go with 1:1 soil and scoria. But with plastic pots or sealed pots, glazed pots, I would go with more scoria just to make it drain a lot more. And I'm sure some of you would know why. The main reason is that with clay pots, with porous pots, unsealed pots, water can still go out of the walls. But with plastic pots, they can only drain from the holes below. So that's the main reason why I change the composition of scoria and soil. Now, let me just zoom back a bit and reading the comments. A bit north. Okay. So I'm guessing somewhere in the northwest, north. Oh well. What was I going to do? Yeah. Now I remember. I was supposed to start mixing my soil. But before I begin, some of you might be familiar with these bags because I got this from Bunnings. These are worth $3.95, I think, almost $4. There's a cheaper bag which goes $2.45 or $2.49, I think. I used to go with those, but unfortunately the cheaper ones, they tend to have lots of wood chips and bark, which I don't know, which are not really ideal for these types of plants. Main reason is that they are irregular, they still decompose, and there's a lot of vectors, lots of chance for fungus and bacteria, you know, to attack your plants. So I go with something that's, well, this one has less of the wood chips, or at least I know this from experience because I've already tried this one. So yeah, that's pretty much the reason why I went with this one. I would go with the more premium mixes if I want to, but you know, they cost more, and I'm going to mix them with scoria anyway, so it's quite a waste as far as I'm concerned. They're going to be the same once I mix them with scoria, and I could always just add my own, you know. So let's get started. Is anyone else doing some gardening today? Well, I guess if you're doing gardening, you're not watching the stream. Just so you could see what I mean about the wood chips, let me give you a closer look. Sorry about that, technical problems galore. Okay, so I'm getting lots of questions now. Alright, so scoria, yes, scoria is a type of volcanic rock. It's like pumice. The difference between scoria and pumice is that scoria is heavier. It has the holes in pumice. There's more holes in pumice. Pumice traps a lot more air, which is why it tends to float sometimes. Scoria has fewer holes, I guess, or at least it is more dense compared to pumice, so this tend to be heavier than pumice. And I'm not sure about your area, but here in Australia, or at least here in Melbourne, scoria is a lot cheaper than pumice, about 2 or 3 times cheaper. And I'm just going through the questions. Yes, if you're after, yeah, if you could source a lot of pumice cheap, then go for pumice. I agree with Weston here. Scoria is heavier, and if you're going to use them in pots, of course you'd like lighter materials. So I definitely agree. Yeah, like Bella said, it's so expensive. It depends on your area pretty much. So in some areas it might be cheaper, but at least here it's 2 or 3 times the price of scoria. So I just go with the cost-effective option and just go with scoria, because here in Melbourne they're quite easy to score. They're quite common here, basically. Just looking at the comments. Hello Anna Rose. Hello Japan. Hello California. Hello San Francisco. So moving on, I'm not sure what you missed out earlier, but I was saying that I usually do 1:1 or 1:2, where there's only one part of scoria to more of soil. That's when I do my garden beds on the ground. The main reason being, the main reason is drainage. So when they are in the ground, it's a lot easier for water to drain and they dry quite easily. But if in pots, the drainage is different, which is why I go with 1:2 or 1:1 or 2:1, where there's more scoria than soil. In this case, I'm doing pots, and I think right now we are at 1:1. I might have to add a bit more scoria because I still see lots of black patches here, and I want it to look more red than black. My scoria is red, so I think it's a good idea to get scoria or any type of pebble that's different color from your soil. That way you could tell them apart once you mix them. I think that's a life hack right there. This might be loud when I mix, so cover your ears or something. Okay, I think I'm satisfied with this. There's more red than black now. I think my base is ready. So I'm going to have a look at some of the comments now. Yeah, perlite is quite expensive for the amount you get. It's more expensive than perlite, more expensive than pumice at least, I think. And they float a lot and they fly around, and you could mistake them for styrofoam, you know. Yeah, that's a good mix, Weston. That's about 2/3. Yeah, that's a good mix. That's 2:1. Yeah, that's pretty much the same as mine. 60 to 70%, that's 2:1. And I think we should start with a few plants here. I've got a lot of plants, and some of them I'm planning to bring them to the show. The rest, I just need to move them to larger pots because it's spring soon and I need them to, not to be stunted with their growth. Larger pots would help them grow even more. Oh, that's good to know. So Anna here says that in Japan, perlite is cheaper. So it's interesting what things are like in different parts of the world. Live stream sessions like these, they really help. Okay. On to the plants. I think one of the first things that I would like to plant here would be this one. I'm not sure if you can see this. This is a Echeveria colorata linceana. No, this is a colorata brantiae because the leaves are longer and more slender. And I just need to find a suitable pot for this. Does this look okay? It's not deep enough though, because the roots are already well established. So I think I'll give it a bigger pot. A deeper pot at least. Yeah, this one looks to be perfect. Now where did I place my trowel? So when I plant, I usually remove all of the dead leaves that I see, because it's a lot easier to do it while they are not yet in the pot. If the dead leaves are just dry and they do not have any bugs or fungus, then I just mix them in with the soil again, because when they decompose, at least the nutrients will be going back to the soil. But take note that you would not want rotting stuff near your plants, because there's lots of microbes there. So in this case, these are dry, so it's fine. But I guess you could reuse them, but do not maybe plant them in together yet. But if you accidentally put them in together, it doesn't really matter. It's already dry. So the way I plant is I just hold it like this. I'm pretty sure you have your own methods, your own techniques, but I just hold it with my left hand. I'm right-handed. Hold it like how you hold champagne glasses, and just pour soil around it. In terms of how deep or how high the soil is, I have a preference of leaving maybe 1 centimeter from the brim. That way, when I water, I could just flood the whole thing and have a little buffer of water and let the water flow down. For one, that tells me if the drainage is working, and another, at least I do not have to just point my hose at it for a long time. I could just flood the whole thing and just let it absorb. More depends on the pot, I guess, but more or less that would work, depending on the plant as well. But I already know my echeverias and I know how much water they would need. This one was in a spot where it was not getting enough water, which is why it looks so stressed right now. But anyway, if it was in a more shady spot and it was getting a lot more water, it might not look this closed. Oh, there's a lot of people online now. With regards to pot sizing, I'm sure you would hear a lot of opinions about it. I don't really have much of an opinion, except that you just need to give it enough space. I don't believe in over and under potting, because enough space. And for most people, what they call that would be over potting. I think that's when you give it a larger pot than the size of the plant. But what they fail to realize, or at least what I do differently, is that my drainage is good, and it would more or less be the same drainage rate as if you plant in the ground. So the whole under potting, over potting thing, I don't think it is something that you have to worry about, and as long as your drainage is. So this is the first one. This is the Echeveria colorata forma Brantii. I should have stood on the other side because my shadow is covering the plant. Here. Now let's work on the next one. I want to use something with this little bowl here, and it needs to be something that's also bowl shaped, or at least something that's more flat than it is tall. And I'm having a look around here. This one is quite small. Perfect. I think I'll go with this Cante. What do you think? So yeah, I'm just looking at the comments right now. Anna Rose asks about Akadama. I think Akadama is good as well. It's just that they are expensive to source here. Maybe in Japan it would be a lot cheaper, because that's where everyone gets their Akadama, I guess. If you could, it's as far as I'm concerned, my opinion with this is just drainage. do whatever you need to have good drainage. But as long as you are cost effective about it, I have no concerns. So if Akadama is cheaper for you than pumice or scoria or perlite or whatever, then go with Akadama, definitely. As long as drainage is correct. And there's of course a minor thing about the soil pH, but more or less it's not really an issue. If there's a problem with the pH, if it's too alkaline, you would know with the plants they would not grow fast, and that's easy to correct with you just have to change, add some additives to the soil to make it more acidic. But yeah, anyway, that's a different topic. So Clibo1 asks if I have a Dudleya. I used to have one. I used to have a Dudleya Brittonii, but I think it's dead now because I don't know where it is, so it should be dead. So Jaire Mark Morilla asks, why are some of your echeverias closed and has compact leaves? Hello Philippines. So the main reason is I like to keep them stressed, and it is winter here, last day of winter, and during winter they tend to not grow so much, so I do not give them enough water. They don't need enough water anyway. But anyway, the short answer is I keep them stressed. That way they would stay compact and they would have their colors. So another example, this one, Echeveria Hera. I keep them stressed, and the way to do that is to give them as much sun as I could possibly give them. So as you can see, the shape here is still cup-like and it's all facing up. If there's not enough sunlight, then the leaves would be drooping down. This is an example. This is an Echeveria Barbellion, and the lower leaves are pointing downwards. It's mainly because, well, number one, it is dormant, but at the same time, it was not getting enough sun. It was somewhere in the corner in the garden. So it is getting shaded at some parts of the day. But as you can see, the inner leaves are facing upwards, cup-like, because these ones are getting more sun. But overall, yeah, it's mainly about the amount of sunlight that I give them. And of course, if you're going to give them more sun, make sure to do it gradually. Do not just move them out in the open right away. You have to be careful about giving them sunlight, because otherwise they would burn. So Ed says Dudleya are hard to keep alive. Well, I cannot say yes or no. I'm not sure, because I only had the one plant, and I can't find it anymore. I'm pretty sure it died. Because if I can't find the plant, then it's either it has died or I moved it somewhere where I would never be able to see it again. So Jairo says, yeah, it's cloudy in the Philippines, which, yes, so exactly, yeah, they're not getting enough sunlight, which is why they tend to lay flat. That's their way of trying to get enough surface area exposed to the sun. Out here, even during the shorter days in winter, I have my plants out in the open where they could have access to as much sun as I could possibly give them. That is why they stay compact. And yeah, let's do the next one now. This is one of my younger cantes. I've been keeping this hidden for quite a while now, but I think now that it is almost spring, it needs to go out. Now, when I remove plants from pots, from smaller pots, I usually try to break apart the soil and try to spread out the roots. I try not to break out the roots though, because they would need the roots to be able to start growing again. If I remove the roots, they would need to pause for a while and focus on growing the roots before growing the plant, and I want to avoid that. I just want them to focus on growing the main plant. So I have loosened the roots enough, I think. There's still some here. The reason why I try to loosen them is because back in the pots, they tend to coil or twirl around because they do not have enough room. But now that I'm giving them a larger pot, they now have the space to grow and spread their roots outward. I do not want them to continue coiling around and eventually strangle themselves. So yeah, this is what I usually do when I move plants from a smaller container into a larger container. Or if I plant them in the ground, it's the same. So for those who have just joined us, I'm planting my Cante now, Echeveria Cante, and I'm planting in this low bowl. It is a bit low, but still tall enough that the roots would not be squashed. And I think this would last me until probably the end of summer, because by then it might have probably outgrown it and I might have to move it again. But until then, I'm going to keep it in here and I'm going to give you a close-up. So this is the Cante in the new bowl. Looking at the comments again. So Lucy asks, do you tamp the soil down to save on the soil level lowering too quickly? I don't, because for one, I have scoria in my soil, so they do not tend to compact as much. But at the same time, I do not want the air pockets to be so. I want as much air pockets as possible around within the soil, because the way transpiration and the way the whole thing works, the whole thing with the roots, they need air pockets to be able to do some gas exchange, and to be able to function properly, they need some space around them. They actually, with succulents at least, they get most of the water from the moisture in the air, from the air pockets, rather than directly from the plant, because they are so used to well draining soil, or at least they're so used to just the water being just passing. They are not waterlogged most of the time, so they have adapted in such a way that they can get water from the moisture from the air pockets. So to leverage on that, you would want to keep as much air pockets as possible, and in my case, I do not tamp them down, but at least having scoria or any pebbles really in your soil would provide a bit of rigidity in your mix, which means that even if you tamp them down, there's still going to be some air pockets thanks to the pebbles. So yeah, I think I'll start working on one of the larger plants here. This is going to be hard because I do not have a proper plant yet for them yet. So this is my Echeveria monaloa. As you can see, it's quite big. I'm just reading the comments there. So yeah, it's quite a huge plant. This is the biggest monaloa in my collection, but it is not the biggest plant. The Zorro is just bigger than this one. And with big plants, I have a huge problem with finding the right pot for them, especially given this type of shape, because it was in the ground, but it got so top heavy, it started to lay down and bend. So as you can see, it is J-shaped, or it has a curve. So this is going to be tricky. I wonder where I should plant this. No, the reason why I wanted to replant this is because I want to bring this to the show. But now I'm starting to have second thoughts. Maybe this would work. Yeah, maybe this would work for a few months, and or at least until the show, and I'll move this back into the ground because this deserves to be out in the open, you know, not trapped in a pot. I'm just going to keep this in this pot for the show, but after that I'll be planting it back in the ground where it belongs. Just looking at the comments again. So Jade asks, how long have you had that? This has been in my collection for 3 years now. When I got it, it was just a tiny pop. Probably, I'm just looking for another plant to give you an idea. Roughly this size. So if you could imagine, something like this. So it was really tiny when I got it, but look, it's a giant now. So Lala says, buy a wheelbarrow and make a nice garden in it for your Mauna Loa. Yeah, that seems to be a good idea. Huh. Huh. Yeah, I could go look around for one. Well, we'll see. I need to find a space for it. Yeah, good suggestion. Good suggestion. Anna Rose says, are you going to put pebbles afterwards? And you're referring to top dressing? Yes, I would, but not now. I haven't found well, I still have to source those pebbles. As far as top dressing is concerned, it's a polarizing topic. A lot of people are against it. A lot of people are not. Sorry, I got distracted. There's a bird eating the nectar of my echeveria flowers, and I don't want to startle it. Okay. There were 2 honey eaters just now. Bella asked, will you behead this one after the show? Actually, maybe I would, because I do not like the way it is bending, you know? It's so hard to plant with these types when there's a bend. So I might behead it. Yeah, yep. Thanks for reminding me. So with regards to top dressing, again, like I said, it's a polarizing topic. A lot of people are against it, a lot of people are for it. Not a lot of people in the middle ground, I guess. Aside from the aesthetics, of course, if your drainage is good, then it's not going to retain too much moisture. It also depends on how much sunlight, I guess, you're getting. But the main thing I like about top dressing is if I use something light, it helps provide sunlight to the plant as well from the bottom, because as you know, black absorbs everything, white reflects everything. So you know, it's serving as a mirror, a reflector. That's the main thing. That's the main reason why I want it. The second reason why I like having top dressing is because a lot of the vectors, a lot of the sources for infection is in the soil. So we have the microbes and fungus. They come from the soil, and if the leaves stay too wet for too long, then those microbes could travel over to the leaves from the soil, especially when you water them, and you know, they will splash back. So by covering the soil, protecting them, you would prevent the splashback, and at the same time, the leaves would be touching something else, something that's relatively more clean, I guess. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just it serves as a barrier. So I really need the barrier to help keep them from being infected all of the time. Yeah, that's the 2 main reasons. The rest are minor, and it's mostly aesthetic. But yeah, that's my preference. Yes, I agree with Klibo saying that succulents like rocks. They grow between rocks in the wild. So yeah, if you have a look at succulents in their habitat, then definitely they grow in hard to grow areas where other plants would have a harder time, usually in rock faces and stuff. But these succulents that we have here, they are cultivated in greenhouses. They have been, they have already adapted to regular garden conditions, which is why they tend to die with too much care. They are not able to do as extreme as their wild counterparts, but still, compared to regular plants, they still do better in more extreme conditions. And what I like to do in my garden is to try to be a bit more like the habitat side, which is why I like planting in the ground as opposed to pots. But I guess in this case, it's funny because I am planting them in pots now. It's a necessary evil, I guess, because I need to bring them to the show and I can't bring my whole garden to the show. Comments. Fertilizer. I would add fertilizer soon when they show signs of active growing, because right now they're still asleep. Most of them are dormant. Take this Mauna Loa for instance, it's still mostly reddish. There's a bit of green in the middle, which is a good sign it's starting to grow. So yeah, when I think when the temperatures are consistently warm, that's when I would start fertilizing them. But right now it's still getting cold, so you know they might get confused. Today is 17 degrees, feels like 11 degrees Celsius, and I think when the daytime temperatures start going over 20, that's when I would fertilize them. Yeah, that's generally how I do. I just wait for the average temperatures to go up. So like Aneta said, with my plants, if you see leggy stuff, it's mainly because they are old or at least they are old enough to grow a long stem like this one. But yeah, I do have some leggy plants that are in the shade, mainly because the main reason they are leggy is because I forgot about them. You know, I just forgot I had them and they are in the shade. But for the most part, I like moving them out in the garden, which is why if you had a look around right now, there's a lot of pots in the ground. And those are the plants that I'm trying to slowly acclimatize to the sun. Anyway, I got distracted. I think I should plant this now. This is going to be tricky because of the curve. So what I'm going to do is still have it bending, facing forward, I guess. And this is quite a large pot, so I'll be using the bigger shovel. Okay, so that is done, but I would need to reinforce because it's still going to bend, it's still going to lean forwards because of the heavy head. And for that, I'm going to look for a few rocks just to place underneath. I have some rocks out at the back which I could use. And this technique is usually called staging using rocks. So I'm heading back to the plant now. I've got a bunch of decently sized rocks which I'm going to place around the stem. So think of this like as top dressing, only they are leaning into these rocks. I'm going to add a bit more soil underneath and place the rocks. I could use twigs, but I can't find twigs here. Anyway, an alternative that you could use is to have just to have a stake, and well, maybe not tie it, but yeah, you could tie it to a stake. But I'm doing this on the fly rather quickly, so for now it's just rocks. I'm going to look for a stake next time. It's so heavy. Okay, looking at the comments again. Yes, calusing is very important. Yeah, I'm glad you like it, Lucy. And Honeybee, you just need time. Just need time. You can catch up. You can catch up. So the next plant that I'm going to put in a pot now would be this Echeveria West Rainbow. You know who you are, the one who gave this to me. I had this in the shelves for almost a week now because it was raining and I didn't really like to go out in the garden, you know. So I finally found the time to do some repotting today, and this should be easy. As you can see, it started to become a bit leggy because it has been in the shade for quite a long time. So it's a shame, but yeah, we're going to plant this now. And I think I've got the right pot for it. This is just the right size. And like I said, I left it in the shelf for about a week now, which is good, I guess, because at least any cuts that it has will have already healed by now. I can see some tiny roots, which is good. And I hope it's not too late, because if those roots dry out, it will have to grow another set of roots again. But it's not going to be an issue because it's starting to get warm here, so it's going to start growing things anyway. So yeah, West Rainbow here. The next plant that I would like to show you for repotting would be this stump. This is a, if I'm not mistaken, this is the Arlie Wright stump. It has lots of pops along the stem, and my opinion about stumps is that I do not remove the pops unless the main stem is starting to dry. In this case, yes, you can see it is turning brown. So this top one, I might have to remove it already and place it in its own pot. But otherwise, if this was still healthy, this top part here, then I would just leave it to grow, because as I always say, the pops would grow faster if they are attached to a well-established plant. In this case, this stump. And yeah, so I'm going to separate this little pop here just by twisting. I'm not going to chop the stem. When I twist, it's going to be the same as trying to remove leaves for propagation. You have to remove it from the node. So you just have to push a little bit. So that you do not break off its own stem. I think I need to remove the next pop as well. Yeah, only the top two seem to be near the drying part. The next ones are still in the green, the fleshy bits, so I'll leave them alone. Since I'm planting them in dry soil, I can repot them now. I only leave them to callus if I do not have access to dry soil. Well, this soil is dry, so yeah. As long as I remember not to water this for the next week, then I'll be fine. It just has this little stem here, so I'll just push it down, push it into position, and I'll do the same for the other pop. And here are the two Arlie Wright pops. Okay, now I'm going to read some comments again. Lucy asks if I have a Compton carousel. No. Main reason is I do not really collect variegated succulents. I think some of you know this already. Yes, these are due to beheading. Yeah, everyone is correct here. So the next plant would be this Echeveria blue butterfly. The blue butterfly is a Gibiflora hybrid, so you could expect this to be large. It's still a pup, but it won't be for long, especially now that the growing season is upon us. So I need to move this into a larger pot before it starts filling up this tiny pot here. I think I would need to check the battery level of my camera, because right now my camera is just running on batteries. I don't have a continuous power source for it yet, so I might have to cut this short depending on how much battery life is left, or I could pause and switch to the other battery. I have a half full battery. Let me just check. Yeah, this one has 1 bar left. Anyway, this is the blue butterfly. It's a bit leggy. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's a bit leggy, but hopefully once I slowly move it out in the garden under the sun, it will be more compact. So yeah. I'm going to look at some comments again. Hi Rose. Yeah, I think I'm going to swap over to the next battery. If you would give me a moment, I'll just run and grab the other battery. Okay, I think we're back. Lola. Yeah, I would agree that head chops would be good, but the Lola tend to produce offsets anyway. Let me just grab mine. Okay, so here's my Lola. And with the Lola, if you grow them properly, then it would take a lot of time before they become leggy, because they tend to stay compact and they have a very short stem. A good thing about them is they tend to grow a lot of pops anyway, if they're mature enough. I've already gathered some, but I think you could see some of the pops underneath. Hopefully. There's still a lot growing under. And I think by the time summer comes around, they would be large enough that they would be peeking out under the skirt. But yeah, so with regards to propagating the Lola, number one, they tend to grow a lot of pops anyway, so just let them grow large enough, let them grow mature enough, and you would get lots of pops. Another way, again, since I said earlier that they tend to be compact, it's hard to get them to have leggy stems. So what you could do is, if you're willing to sacrifice your plant, you could just remove the central bit of the plant, the part where it starts growing leaves. Just destroy that bit, and it will force a lot of offsets to grow along the sides. It's the same as beheading, only you're just removing the very tip of the plant. So that's how you would propagate from short stem plants if you wanted the same result as head propagation. Yeah, I agree with Bella that the Lola tends to grow slowly, or at least it appears to grow slowly because it is a short stemmed rosette. If we tend to only see the height and the overall diameter, but with compact plants like this, you have to look at the number of leaves. That would tell you if it has grown or not. Because definitely, if you compare the number of leaves now versus the number of leaves now versus a few months later, then you would see that the number of leaves have increased. That's the sign of growth. Lola on steroids. Yeah, let me just show you again. I had this for 2 years now, I think. When I got it, it was a tiny plant. So I understand, especially for the new collectors, because I was the same as you before. I want to get my plants big, fast. I want them to grow as fast as they can and to have as many as I can, propagating them. And you tend to be so impatient during your first few years. But once you have your plants for a few years and they start popping on their own, it doesn't seem slow anymore, especially since by that time you are likely to have a lot of plants anyway. So you will be busy looking at the other pops, and another would pop, and then eventually this one would pop. Oh yeah, that's essentially how I would describe my garden experience here. There's always something happening. Looking at comments again. I'm not going to try that method. It's it's something that you would want to do on a spare plant. So if you have two Lolas and you don't mind mutilating one of them, then just pinch the end and it will grow. What else? What else shall we repot here? So I've got this neon breakers, which is still in the tiny pot that I got it with. I have been looking at the photos. I posted this in my daily Echeverria twice now, I think. The first one was just days after I bought it, and the second was quite recently. So here's what it looks like. The neon breakers is a Shavayana hybrid. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is based on, what the other parent is, but one of the parents is Shavayana. And a lot of people have been asking me what's the difference between neon breakers and a Shavayana. I think the main difference would be with the leaves, not the leaves, would be with the flowers. I haven't really compared with the leaves because there's a lot of Shavayana forms out there. There's a truffles, which is a smaller type, which looks like, if you could imagine the elegance. I hope I have one in pot to show you. No, I don't have one. But the truffles tends to be more ball-like, while other Shabayans tend to be more spread out. I think the neon breakers is based on the Shabayana that is more spread out. And I wish I could show you more differences, but right now this is a tiny plant, so I can't really show you how to tell them apart. I'll do it in another video in the future, I promise. I just have to let this grow. And in order for this to grow, this growing season, of course I would need to transfer it into a larger pot. And I'm going to look for a pot now. I think this would work. As you can see, the roots are quite long, which is why it really needed to be transferred already. And before I would transfer it, there's a lot of dead leaves underneath. I would just have to remove them, because I don't really have to remove them. It's just that, I don't know, it's like popping a pimple, you know. I can't help it. And here we go. So the neon breakers is in a pot now. As you can see, it is quite narrow, or at least it looks squashed right now. It's mainly because of the pot size that it was in before. But otherwise, the leaves are cupped upwards. It looks very compact. It doesn't look leggy. It's because I've been giving it a lot of sun, a lot of sun. And you can tell by the color as well. Because usually in their growing season, the neon breakers and a lot of other Shabayana hybrids, they tend to be more gray. Right now it's still dormant, it's still stressed, so it's more on the pink side. Comments. The ripples, do you mean the rippling waters? Rippling waters is also another Shavayana hybrid, I think, but I'm not sure with which. There's another popular hybrid here in Australia, which is called Echeverria gun sign, which kind of looks like the rippling waters, only larger, or at least the leaves are larger. The gun sign has one parent is Shabayana. I'm not sure what the other parent is. It is made by, I can't remember the name, John Morgan and Oates. It's an Australian breeding company, the Great Australian Succulent Company. I think that's what their name is. And they have a patent, no, not yet a patent, I think it's a patent application. So some shops, when you try purchasing it in some shops, they would come with these labels saying that this plant is under, I can't remember the exact term, but they are still applying for patent for that plant. So it's not like it's illegal to distribute right now, or was it already? I think they are already patented. But anyway, so for those types of plants, if you see a patent protection thingy on the box or on the label, then It's only illegal to sell. You could propagate them on your own in the garden, or give it away, but you are not allowed to sell. And it's not like they would go into private collectors and fine people for doing that. It's more about protecting their research, their plant, from being mass produced by other breeders. Because one way to mass produce something is something called tissue culture. It's a laboratory thing where you take a sample, a tissue from the plant, and grow it in some sort of medium, and it just produces lots of plants, basically. I want to be able to do that someday. I have been reading a little bit about tissue culture because, as you know, I'm trying to make my own hybrids. I could, if I have the time, I could try doing a tissue culture on my own. I have to see what sort of equipment is needed, but otherwise I could just find a company that does that. I think there's a lot here in Australia because I've heard friends who own nurseries who had some plants tissue cultured and they have been selling it. This is the reason why you tend to see a lot of the same plant almost immediately. They just tend to flood the market. It's tissue cultures. Hi Erica. Before I forget, you do know that I have this campaign about trying to flood this October show with succulents with Echeveria, and I'm hoping that a lot of you would join, especially those of you here in Victoria. So reminder, please please bring your own Echeveria, because it would be weird to see everything just under my name. Yeah, okay. Another plant that I would really like to move into a pot would be this Pachyphytum oviferum, which people know with the common name of moonstones. This is the only one I have, actually. I have other types of Pachyphytum, but this is the only oviferum that I have in my collection. And if I move it into a larger pot, this might stimulate the growth. And I'm hoping it's not too late, because Pachyphytum tends to like slightly colder temperatures than Echeveria. So I should have done this before, but it's not too late because it's still going to grow a lot during spring. Now I just have to find a suitable pot for it. I want it to spread, so I want to give it a slightly bigger pot, slightly wider pot. No, this is too big. Yeah, I guess I could go with this one for now. But no, it's too heavy. It's too heavy. I'll just go with a regular terracotta for now and just move it into a squat pot later on. So this is the Pachyphytum oviferum, which is commonly known as moonstones, and this is the correct moonstones because a lot of people use the same name on a bunch of other fat or thick pebble-looking plants, which are either based on Graptopetalum amestinum or this one or Glutinicole. There's a lot of them that look alike, only the leaf shape are different. You could tell this is an oviferum because the tip is not pointy. I'm not sure if you could see it here, but yeah, it is not pointy, and that's the main thing. The next would be the flowers. So the Graptopetalum amestinum kind of looks a bit like this one, and you can tell them apart from the flowers once the flower comes out. The flower for the oviferum, since it is a Pachyphytum, it would be more tube-like, tubular, while the Graptopetalum would be open and star-like. So yeah, that's another way to tell them apart if you cannot tell from the shape of the leaves. Which reminds me, I'm working on another video, identification video, about the shape of the leaf apex. I hope I could record it today, but I'm having fun repotting. I think I'll do most of the repotting off camera, and yeah, maybe next time. So I'm looking at the comments again. I don't know or remember any of the names of my succulents. I just love growing them. That's good. Less stress. So yeah, the thing, I think it's both a blessing and a curse being able to remember or know the names, because as a collector you would want to have uniques in your collection, or at least you'd want to expand the number of things that you could list rather than getting the same type every time. So I would call it a curse because whenever I go look at new plants, whenever I'm in a mood for purchasing new plants or shopping for new plants, if I see plants that look really good, and once I find out from their name that I already have it, then I get a bit disappointed inside, even though the plant is still pretty enough that I would want to get it. But you know, I start getting second thoughts just for the mere fact that it's already in my collection. So yeah, sometimes I wish that I didn't mind as much, so I could just get a pretty plant, because I like pretty plants as much as any collector. But yeah, I don't like duplicates. I wish I were that organized. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to start a spreadsheet like Weston is doing, but I get so lazy in terms of updating the sheets, because even just taking pictures, you know, I used to take photos and upload them in albums on my Facebook page as well as on my own website, but I take them for granted because I know in my mind that I could remember the names just by looking at them. So which is why I don't need to look at my own photos for reference. But that's what I tell myself, that's what I like to believe. But in reality, let's say after a year or after a few growing seasons has passed, the plants, they tend to look a bit different, and without the labels I can tell which is which. So what I usually do is to look back at some of my videos and see where I planted the plant that I have labeled, because sometimes in my videos I list down the name of the plant, or at least I would remember what it is, because I could remember how they used to look like. But once they change their appearance again, sometimes I would not know what they are anymore. So yeah, Lucy, yes, exactly. I often miss out on getting it because I think I have it, but I get home and I don't have it. Yes. Yeah, the only fix here is just to buy the plant and regret it later, rather than, I don't know, just buy it. And if you have a multiple of it, maybe just try to propagate and resell it, I guess. At least that's what I'm trying to do now. So here's another one that I would like to move into a proper pot, because right now it's in a tiny plastic pot. This is an Echeveria Hera, or at least it's known as Hera here in Australia. I'm not sure what the correct or the official name is. There's no official name yet. And from what I know, this is a hybrid based on Afterglow. And you could tell once it flowers and once it gets larger. I have a larger plant somewhere. The flowers kind of look similar to the Afterglow's flowers. And at the same time, the leaf edges, it's hard to describe verbally, but yeah, I think I'll do it in a video at some point. They have this little ridge here, so they have a sharp tip, and then, they have a sharp tip, then they taper out, they go a bit flat, and then they have this other ridge that tends to fold inwards. I see that a lot in Shavayana, in Afterglow, and basically any hybrids that are based on those. So they tend to fold this part before they do any of the curls. So yeah, I'll do a separate video on that, because it's hard to show you on this live stream what I mean exactly. So anyway, the Hera, I want to move it into a proper pot, because this plastic pot is just temporary. And as you can see, it's not even breaking apart. The root ball is not breaking apart. It's mainly because there's lots of roots already, which means that I could probably move it into a larger pot. So I'm just removing some of the leaves, and because I just can't stand seeing the dead leaves. The only time you really need to remove the leaves is when the leaves are fungus stricken, if you know what I mean. If they are sick or infected or something. Dry leaves, not as much unless you're having problems with airflow. So yeah, because at least the dry leaves, they are not doing anything as far as infection is concerned, because the reason they are dry in the first place is because there's no infection. But if there's an infection, that means you have an airflow problem, and that's when you definitely need to do something about those lower leaves. Now, as for this root ball, I want to loosen it up because, like I said earlier in one of my previous repotting, I want the roots to start moving outwards rather than coiling around, and by leaving the root ball like this, they are more prone to just, you know, twisting around on itself, and they would strangle themselves, if that makes sense. So I'm going to remove some of the soil just to make sure I can find the tips of the roots. And as you can see, let me just go closer. I have freed the tips of the roots, which now means that if they grow, they would be growing outwards rather than trying to turn around and twist around the pot. And by giving them a taller pot than before, that means they have more room to stretch their legs, if that makes sense. So again, going back to a previous conversation that we had in this stream about overpotting and underpotting, the main reason why you would want to go to a bigger pot is a function of water retention, because once the roots are extensive enough and they fill up the pot enough, then there's less water that is available to them. They need more surface area for water, and if the whole soil is just roots, then there's less air pockets for the roots to grab moisture from. So that's the main reason why you need to transfer them to something bigger. But the other problem with that is if you're using sealed pots, plastic pots or whatever, then moisture is retained longer than it is needed, which might be a problem with, you know, it could cause fungus infection, especially if the soil that you're using is dirty or if there are cuts on your plants. Anyway, it's a cause for infection if the soil is not particularly clean. So here's the Hera. Hopefully it starts growing bigger once spring comes. I'm just counting the number of plants I repotted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, not bad. 11. Yeah. There's one more that I wanted to do because I pulled it out of the ground and I do not want it to be sitting in dry, just sitting out in the air. And it's this one. This is the Echeveria verrugas. It is a bumpy hybrid. It is based on Giviflora and it is one of Dick Wright's hybrids. So yeah, it's a bumpy monster and I love it. One of my favorites here actually. And it's more compact than the Mauna Loa. It tends to be dome shaped, as you can see here. And I'm definitely bringing this with me in the succulent show. Now I just need to find a suitable pot for it. I might place it in the same type of pot that I used for my Mauna Loa, at least for now. But I think I'll be giving it a bigger pot at some point. Okay, yeah, because this pot, while it is deep, it is not wide enough, so it's going to be hard for me to maneuver. But yeah, it would work for now, temporarily. I'm just looking around just to see if I have other pots that I could use. No, I still need it to be deep enough, so I'm just going to look at the comments for now, see what I missed. eBay, okay. I don't mind knowing how much I spent because I think it's worth it, but I don't think my husband would want to see. Yeah, yeah, it's a good thing that, yeah, speaking of that, speaking of spending, I have recently opened a separate account, bank account for just for Cerriscapades, because I do not want, you know, it's getting hard trying to separate my purchases. Let's say if I go to Bunnings and swipe cards, it's getting hard trying to figure out which one were mine, my expenses for the garden as opposed to general home expenses. So it's getting hard because I top up whatever I spend. If let's say I spend $100 on my gardening stuff and using my shared account with my wife, I transfer $100 from my own account back into the shared account just to cover it, you know. So yeah, just to keep things a lot easier and more easier to control, I made a separate bank account for my purchases I actually have, or at least I let the garden pay for itself for the most part. Oh, hey Oscar, you should show a random succulent and see if we can guess it. Guess that succulent. Okay, I'll start with something easy, or at least I think this should be easy. Right, 3, 2, 1. Can anyone tell me what this is? I'll be looking at the comments. I think this should be easy, but we'll see. The colors look weird. Let me just check my camera settings. There. Again. Yes, that's Aeonium Sunburst. That's correct. Oh, that's much better. Different colors. Yeah, my previous setting was more muted. It wasn't showing the colors because I usually color grade my stuff. Yeah. Yes, Sunburst. Next one, I think this should be familiar. Let's see. I think this should be easy. Let's see who guesses it first. Yes, it's a Black Prince. That's right. Sorry for the delay. There's a slight delay from my live and looking at my camera. But yeah, Bella is correct. Okay, I think I'll go with something a bit more tricky. Here. I wonder who'll get it first. Yes, Clibo 1 is correct. It's the Aeonium, commonly known as dinner plate, Aeonium tabuliforme. Yes. So Clibo and Oscar got it right. Tabuliforme or dinner plate plant. I'll go grab another one. Let me just... Okay, I think I got this. Here. Yeah, this is quite heavy. Oh no, my phone is dying. 5%. Let me just look at the comments. Yes, jelly beans. Acidum rubrotinctum, the jelly beans. And I think I'm going to cut this short because I've already gone through one camera battery and my phone's battery is about to die. And I won't be able to read your comments anymore. Thanks for hanging out in the live stream. I'll see you next time. I'm not yet sure when, but this was fun. This was fun. It was a lot more enjoyable than I care to admit. So I'll see you next time. I would probably work on my next episode because I wouldn't want to waste the sunlight, you know. So I'll see you then. Bye.